Retire, my son said, swirling the champagne I paid for. He didn't mean a vacation. He meant a cage. They thought the old chef was finished. They were about to learn I still knew how to use a knife. If you're listening to this, hit subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps to know I'm not alone. Because sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who sharpen the blade. The smell of garlic, thyme, and simmering veal stock was my air. It was the scent of my life. I'm Michael, and for 30 years I owned the Hearth. It wasn't just a restaurant. It was a promise I made to Sarah, my late wife. We built it from nothing. Rented storefront, second-hand ovens, a shared dream. It was where we raised our son, Ethan. Sarah had been gone for 2 years. The silence she left behind was a physical ache, a hole in my chest that never healed. But in the kitchen, amidst the clatter and the heat, I could still feel her. She was the soul of the Hearth. I was its hands, and I wasn't ready to let go. It was the night of our 30th anniversary. The restaurant was packed. The chandeliers cast a warm glow. Regulars who became friends, staff who became family. I stood near the open kitchen, watching the ballet of cooks and servers. Pride tightened my throat. This was my world. But something felt wrong. A cold draft in a warm room. Across the room they sat in the corner booth. Ethan and his wife, Chloe. Ethan was 32. Sharp features, suits that always looked a little too expensive. He always looked like he was closing a deal. Chloe was like a porcelain doll with a diamond edge. Beautiful, cold. Her eyes scanned the room, assessing the value of everything, including me. They were sipping champagne, but their smiles didn't reach their eyes. They weren't celebrating. They were waiting to strike. I walked over to their table. I forced a smile I didn't feel. The tension tightened the muscles in my neck. Enjoying the evening? I asked. Ethan looked up. His eyes were flat. No warmth. It's busy. That's good for revenue. Always revenue. Never the people. It's a milestone, Michael, Chloe said. Her voice was smooth as silk, but just as thin. 30 years. Incredible. She paused, letting the compliment hang before twisting it. But we were just discussing the future. I sat down. The leather booth felt cold. The future? I knew I wasn't going to like what came next. The market is changing, Ethan said. He swirled his champagne. He always talked like he was in a boardroom, not his family restaurant. The Hearth is classic, he said, classic like it was a disease. But classic is dangerously close to outdated, Chloe added, leaning in. Her perfume was sharp, expensive. We need to evolve, Michael. I gripped the edge of the table. Evolve how? We have ideas, Ethan said. Expansion. A second location downtown. A modern rebrand. Sleeker, Chloe added, her eyes shining with ambition. Younger. The word hung in the air. They meant me. I was 65. My hands were scarred from years of kitchen work, but I wasn't done. We evolve every season, I said, keeping my voice low. We adapt the menu, but the core stays the same. Quality. Consistency. That's what Sarah believed in. Sarah isn't here, Michael, Chloe said softly. The cruelty was intentional. A quick jab to the heart. Expansion costs money we don't have, I said firmly, ignoring the sting. And a rebrand would alienate the customers who built this place. Ethan's mask slipped. The polite son vanished. The businessman appeared. We don't have the money because you refuse to leverage the assets, he snapped. You're too conservative, Dad. He leaned closer. The smell of expensive cologne made me sick. You're sitting on a gold mine, he hissed, and you're running it like a lemonade stand. The insult stung deeply. This lemonade stand built his life. This lemonade stand put you through college, Ethan, I said, my voice tight. And I'm grateful, he said, his voice dripping with impatience, not gratitude. But it's time to let the next generation take the wheel. Then he delivered the killing blow. It's time for you to retire, Dad. Retire. The word felt like a death sentence. What was I without my kitchen? The Hearth was my life. I'm not ready, I said, my voice shaking slightly. But then Chloe spoke, and the real nightmare began. Chloe reached out, placing her hand on mine. Her skin was ice cold. You might not be ready, Michael, but your mind is. My blood ran cold. What did she mean? We've noticed things, she continued, her eyes wide with fake concern. It was a performance, a convincing one. You're tired. You're forgetting things. What things? I challenged. My heart pounded. Ethan was ready. He had a list. You missed the meeting with Mr. Dubois last week, the wine distributor. I had to cover for you, Ethan said, shaking his head with practiced disappointment. It was embarrassing. Dubois thought you were unprofessional. I had rescheduled that meeting, hadn't I? The anniversary preparations had been chaos. Maybe I forgot to tell Ethan. Doubt started creeping in. A small, poisonous seed. We're just worried, Chloe said, squeezing my hand. The coldness seeped into my bones. Let us handle the stress. Enjoy your golden years. They stood up together, a united front, a wall of ambition. Think about it, Dad, Ethan said. It wasn't a suggestion, it was an order. They walked away. I watched them greet people, smiling, charming. I was alone in the crowded room. I looked around the hearth. My home, and for the first time I felt a cold wind blowing through the room. They were pushing me out into the wilderness. The confrontation cast a shadow over the following weeks. Ethan and Chloe were relentless. A slow drip of poison. Every conversation was a subtle jab, a gentle nudge towards the exit. They were chipping away at my confidence, piece by piece. It started with small things. I was in the kitchen, prepping for lunch. The rhythm of the kitchen was usually my heartbeat, but today it felt strained. "All right, team," I called out. I looked at Jake, a young cook with talent. He was watching me closely, too closely. The vinaigrette for the salad special. It's olive oil, balsamic, Dijon mustard, and... My mind went blank. Absolutely blank. Avoid where the recipe used to be. It was a simple recipe. I'd made it 10,000 times. The cooks waited. They looked down at their cutting boards. The rhythm stopped. Silence in the kitchen is wrong. Jake shifted nervously. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The tension was thick. "Jeff?" Maria said quietly from behind me. Maria was my general manager, Sarah's best friend, the only person I truly trusted. "Shallots, chef, right, shallots, of course." I shook my head, trying to clear the fog. It felt thick, heavy. Embarrassment burned my cheeks. But that wasn't the worst part. I turned around. Chloe was standing in the doorway, watching, a look of profound pity on her face. "Are you all right, Michael?" she asked loudly, loud enough for everyone to hear. The entire kitchen froze. "You seem very flustered today." She smiled sweetly. "A snake ready to strike. Maybe you should take a break. The stress isn't good for you at your age." "I'm fine," I snapped. But the words sounded weak. The cooks kept their eyes down. The damage was done. The doubt had spread from me to them. Later that day, the fog thickened. I couldn't find my office keys. I searched everywhere. I was frantic. Panic started to rise in my chest. Those keys were the master set. I found them in the last place I looked. The walk-in refrigerator, hanging on a hook next to a side of beef. I stared at them, the cold air biting my skin. My breath fogged in front of me. The metal felt like ice against my palm. I didn't remember putting them there. I didn't remember being in the walk-in at all. That morning, a cold fear settled in my stomach. A deep, paralyzing fear. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was losing it. The grief over Sarah sometimes still swallowed me whole. Maybe the stress was finally breaking me. I felt myself shrinking. They used my self-doubt as a weapon, and they were very good at it. "Michael, you shouldn't be driving anymore," Chloe said one evening. As I was leaving, I was exhausted. "It's dangerous. Your reaction times aren't what they used to be." "Ethan will take you home." "I've been driving since I was 16, I argued, gripping my car keys tightly. "I'm perfectly capable." Ethan appeared from the shadows of the dining room. He held up his phone, a picture of my car, a long, ugly scratch down the side. "Are you capable, Dad?" he asked, his voice cold. "You scraped the side of the car yesterday. You didn't even notice. It was a tiny scratch. It meant nothing. But under their constant scrutiny, every minor error felt like proof of my decline. They were building a narrative, a story about an old man falling apart, and terrifyingly I was starting to believe it. The pressure mounted. They insisted I see a doctor, but not just any doctor. "We need a specialist, Michael," Chloe insisted, cornering me near the bar. I have Dr. Peterson, I said. He had been my physician for 20 years. Dr. Peterson is a general practitioner, Chloe dismissed. We need a geriatric neurologist, someone who understands these issues. She recommended a man named Dr. Adams, recommended by her family. That should have been the first red flag. Just for peace of mind, she said, her eyes shining with false sincerity. If he says you're fine, we'll drop the whole retirement talk. I promise. Lies. But if I refused, it looked like I was hiding something. Reluctantly, I agreed. I walked right into their trap. The appointment with Dr. Adams was humiliating. The clinic was sleek and modern. Glass and steel. It smelled of strong antiseptic, sterile and cold. I tried calling Dr. Peterson before the appointment. His receptionist said he was on vacation. It seemed odd, but I was too distracted, too consumed by the fog. Chloe insisted on coming into the examination room with me. For support, she claimed, citing my memory issue. He gets confused about the details, she told the nurse, patting my arm patronizingly. I felt like a child. She sat in the corner, legs crossed elegantly like a queen watching an execution. Dr. Adams was young, sharp suit, cold eyes. He barely looked at me. He looked at Chloe. He listened to Chloe. Tell him about the keys in the fridge, Michael, she prompted. I felt my face flush with shame. I stayed silent. He found his keys in the refrigerator, Doctor. Chloe filled in the silence. He had no memory of putting them there. And about forgetting the vinaigrette recipe, she added, in front of the entire staff. He just froze. I tried to explain the stress, the pressure, the grief. Dr. Adams nodded sympathetically, but his eyes remained cold. Analytical. It's very common at this stage of life. Mr. Harper, he said smoothly. Stress and grief can certainly exacerbate underlying cognitive decline. Underlying cognitive decline. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Was it true? We'll run some tests, he said, already writing notes. He never once asked me how I felt. The tests were exhausting. Memory quizzes, spatial reasoning puzzles. I felt like I was failing a test designed for me to fail. My hands shook. My mind felt sluggish, slow. The words wouldn't come. I left the office feeling smaller, older, more vulnerable than ever before. The world seemed to be tilting under my feet. I was losing my grip, and they were waiting to push me off the edge. The final blow landed 2 days later. It was a Tuesday morning, quiet. I arrived at the restaurant early. I needed the silence. I walked past the new office. Ethan and Chloe had set up near the front. A modern, glass-walled monstrosity I hated. They were erasing me, piece by piece. The door was slightly ajar. I heard Chloe's voice. Low, urgent, sharp. I stopped. My hand rested on the doorframe. A survival instinct kicking in? Just need to move faster, Mr. Henderson, she was saying into her phone. Henderson, a lawyer, a very expensive, very ruthless lawyer. The evaluation at Dr. Adams is next week, Chloe continued, but we need the guardianship paperwork ready to file immediately. Guardianship. The word hit me like a physical blow. I leaned against the wall, the blood rushing from my head. My vision blurred, my heart pounded. This wasn't about retirement. This wasn't about concern for my health. This was a hostile takeover, a coup. They wanted to have me declared incompetent. They wanted control of everything. The hearth, my house, my life, everything Sarah and I built. I heard Ethan's voice now, muffled but clear. If he fights it, it could get messy. Maria is loyal to him. He won't fight it, Chloe said, dismissively. Her voice was sharp with confidence. He's too confused. He barely knows what day it is. She paused. The next words chilled me to the bone. He believes the narrative we've built. Dr. Adams will back us up. We paid him enough to ensure it. By the time Michael understands what's happening, it will be done. Paid him, Dr. Adams was bought. The diagnosis was a lie. Then Chloe laughed. A cold, tinkling sound that made my skin crawl. He can spend his golden years playing checkers in a nice, comfortable retirement home. We'll make sure it has a good view. Checkers. My vision blurred with rage. The confusion I had felt vanished. The fog lifted instantly, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. The fear was still there, but beneath it something harder was forming. Steel. They saw me as an obstacle, an old dog to be put down. They were erasing me, stripping me of my identity, my dignity, my freedom. They were leaving me in the wilderness, defenseless, and telling the bears where to find me. I backed away silently, my mind racing, the adrenaline surging through me. I walked back to my old office, the cluttered sanctuary they had dismissed. I locked the door. I looked at the framed picture of Sarah on my desk. Her smile radiated warmth and strength. "I won't let them take it, Sarah," I whispered. My voice was steady now. Strong. I had to fight, but I had to be smart. I had to play the role they had assigned me, but use it as a weapon. I needed help. I couldn't trust my own family, my own son. I picked up the phone. I dialed the one person I knew was loyal to me, not the business. Me. "Maria, I need you. Can you meet me?" Not at the restaurant. The war had begun. We met at a small Greasy Spoon diner, across town. A place Chloe wouldn't be caught dead in. The smell of stale coffee and burnt toast was comforting in its honesty. Maria's face was etched with worry. She slid into the booth. "Chef, you look terrible." "What's going on?" she asked, her voice hushed. "Ethan and Chloe are saying you need a long vacation. They're already interviewing new executive chefs. They were already replacing me." The audacity was staggering. I told her everything, the forgetfulness, Dr. Adams being paid off, the conversation I overheard, guardianship, checkers. Maria's coffee cup clattered onto the saucer. Coffee spilled onto the table. Her face turned pale, then flushed with anger. "Those vultures," she whispered fiercely. "They wouldn't dare. After everything you've done for Ethan?" "They're daring, Maria," I said, leaning forward. "They think I'm weak. They think I'm broken. They think I'm alone. That's insane." "You are sharper than anyone I know," she insisted. "That moment with the vinaigrette, that was just stress. They've been pushing you to the edge." She paused, her eyes narrowing. A memory surfaced. "The keys in the fridge, chef." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I saw Chloe come out of the walk-in that morning, around 8 a.m. I thought it was strange. She never goes into the kitchen storage." She looked startled when she saw me. The realization hit me. The keys. The confusion. It wasn't just gaslighting. They were actively manufacturing my decline. "Sabotaging me. I need you to be my eyes and ears," I said, my voice low and urgent. "I need access to the financial records. Ethan changed all the passwords. Locked me out." "He thinks he did," Maria said. A fierce, protective look entered her eyes, a look I recognized. It was the same look Sarah used to get when someone threatened our business. "He forgot that I set the system up 15 years ago," she continued. "I have the master override password. He's arrogant, chef. Arrogant and sloppy." She slid a USB bic across the table. Small, silver, heavy with the truth. Everything from the last year is on there. Bank statements, vendor contracts, payroll, emails, everything. Her loyalty was a lifeline in the storm. I wasn't alone, and I wasn't broken. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my study, the USB stick plugged into my old laptop. The glow of the screen illuminated the darkness. At first it seemed normal. The business was healthy. Profits were steady, proof that I wasn't incompetent. But then I started noticing irregularities. Things that didn't add up. I hit a wall. I tried logging into the main banking portal to see the real-time transactions. The password failed. Ethan had changed the external banking access too. I was completely locked out of my own money, my own business. The feeling of helplessness was overwhelming. A cold rage settled over me. I was fighting a digital war with analog weapons. I focused on what I had, the downloaded statements. I noticed large recurring payments, tens of thousands of dollars, every few weeks, to a company called Apex Hospitality Solutions. I didn't recognize the name. We didn't use consultants. Sarah always hated them. Apex Hospitality Solutions. It sounded generic, fake. Kai cross-referenced the dates of the payments with Ethan's emails. He was careful, vague subject lines, market research, strategic planning, but he wasn't careful enough. Like Maria said, sloppy. The deeper I dug, the more the puzzle pieces came together. The picture they formed was ugly. Apex Hospitality wasn't a consultancy firm. It was a shell corporation. I found the incorporation documents buried in a subfolder, dated 8 months ago. The owners? Ethan Harper and Chloe Harper. My own son, stealing from me. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Gone. Siphoned out of the hearth. My money, my sweat, my life. And then I found it. The twist that changed everything. The revelation that turned my blood to ice. The betrayal that cut deeper than I ever thought possible. A series of emails between Ethan, Chloe, and a commercial real estate agent, Sarah Jenkins. They were scouting locations. Downtown. Prime real estate. Not for expanding the hearth, as they had told me, but for a new venture. A sleek, modern fusion restaurant called Catalyst. The exact kind of trendy, soulless place they had wanted to turn the hearth into. They weren't just trying to take over my business. They were actively bleeding it dry, using my life's work to finance their rival concept. They needed the guardianship, so I couldn't stop them when I found out about the embezzlement. They needed me out of the picture. Silenced, discredited, locked away. The betrayal was deeper, colder, and more calculated than I could have ever imagined. My own son was stealing my legacy to build a monument to his own greed. He wasn't just pushing me into the wilderness. He was burning the forest down behind me. If this story has your heart racing, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Every click helps us keep uncovering stories that deserve to be heard. It helps people like me know that the fight is worth it. The realization galvanized me. The rage focused my mind. They had underestimated me. They saw an old, grieving man, lost in the fog of memory. They didn't see the man who had fought off recessions, bad reviews, kitchen fires, predatory landlords. For 30 years, I had built an empire, and I would defend it. Now I had to walk the tightrope, maintain the facade of confusion while secretly planning a counterattack. I had to become the confused old man they wanted me to be. I had to become the Trojan horse in my own restaurant. The next day, I embraced the role. I put on a sweater that was slightly too big. I shuffled my feet as I walked. I let my shoulders slump. I walked into Ethan's glass office. He and Chloe were looking at blueprints for Catalyst. They quickly covered them when they saw me. A flicker of guilt in Ethan's eyes. "Ethan, dear," I said, my voice weak, my eyes vacant. I looked around vaguely. I can't seem to remember where we keep the coffee filters. Ethan sighed dramatically. He exchanged a satisfied, smug look with Chloe. They were enjoying this. The power, the control. "Dad, we switched to a pod machine months ago," he said slowly, as if talking to a toddler. "Remember, we talked about this. It's easier for you." "Oh, right. Pods. So complicated." I shuffled away. I felt their complacent eyes on my back. They thought they had won. They had no idea the war had just begun. While they were busy managing my decline, I was busy securing my future. I needed a lawyer, not a family lawyer. I needed a shark. I called David Green, a litigator known for his ruthlessness in corporate battles. He was the man you called when you wanted to burn everything to the ground. I met him in his high-rise office downtown. The view overlooked the city, the place where Ethan and Chloe dreamed of building their empire on my dime. David Green was older than I expected. Silver hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing. He didn't offer sympathy. He offered focus. "Mr. Harper," he began, "you called me. Why?" "My son and daughter-in-law are attempting to gain guardianship over me," I said, my voice steady. I dropped the facade. I let him see the steel. "They claim I'm incompetent. They have a doctor willing to lie for them. They are also embezzling significant funds from my business to start their own." His expression didn't change. He wasn't shocked. "Do you have proof of the embezzlement, the manipulation, and the bribery?" I slid the USB stick across his polished desk. "Everything is in there. The shell corporation, the emails, the payments, and the knowledge that Dr. Adams was paid. I took a deep breath. And my general manager, Maria Sanchez, is willing to testify about the gaslighting, about the keys in the fridge. He reviewed the documents briefly. Then a small smile played on his lips. This is compelling. They've been very greedy. He looked up, his eyes locking onto mine. Greedy people make mistakes. We will exploit them. When I returned to the restaurant, the atmosphere had shifted. It was colder, quieter. Chloe had escalated the war. He started intercepting my calls. The phone in my office stopped ringing. The silence was eerie. I checked the main reception desk. Maria whispered the truth, her voice tight with anger. Chloe had instructed the hostesses to forward all my calls to her voicemail. I'm managing his schedule now, she had told them sweetly. He doesn't need the distraction. It confuses him. I was being digitally imprisoned, cut off from the outside world, isolated. They were building walls around me. I had to buy a burner phone just to communicate with David Green, hiding it in my sock drawer like a teenager. The humiliation was constant. The stress was immense. Maintaining the act was draining my energy. I felt the fog creeping back in, the line between the facade and reality blurring. Was I acting confused? Or was I actually confused? The constant pressure was taking its toll. Then, a near miss. As I was leaving David Green's office building one afternoon, I walked out onto the street. I saw Ethan's silver sports car pulling into the parking garage across the street. My heart stopped. Had he followed me? Had I been careless? I ducked into a nearby coffee shop, my hands shaking. I watched him through the window. He was meeting Sarah Jenkins, the real estate agent. They were laughing. Just lunch. But the paranoia was exhausting. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. I had to be more careful. I needed proof of my competence. Undeniable proof. David arranged for an independent medical evaluation. I met with Dr. Evelyn Reed. She was different from Dr. Adams. Warm, thorough. She looked me in the eye. She saw me. I spent 2 days undergoing rigorous testing by doctors who weren't on Chloe's payroll. The results were clear. I was physically healthy, mentally sharp. I was just a man under immense stress and profound grief. I wasn't broken. I had the proof. Now I needed to set the trap. Back at the restaurant, I continued the tightrope walk. I needed them to walk confidently into the trap. I needed to play the victim one last time. I approached Ethan, looking distressed, wringing my hands. Ethan, I said, my voice trembling, I think I have a meeting tomorrow with Richard, the bank manager, about the line of credit. He stumbled over the words. I'm so worried I'll mess it up. I can't find my notes. Where is it again? The downtown branch? Ethan looked annoyed. The inconvenience of dealing with his failing father. No, Dad, he said slowly, patronizingly. It's the North Side branch. At 2 p.m. He paused, a smirk playing on his lips. But don't worry, I canceled it. You're not in the right frame of mind to discuss finances. I'll handle it. Oh, good. Thank you, son. I shuffled away, hiding my smile. The meeting was never scheduled. It was a test. He took the bait, confirming he was monitoring and controlling all my business activities. I documented the conversation immediately for David. The net was closing. The day before the competency hearing, the final attack came. A call from Dr. Adams' office. A final consultation. David insisted I go, to show cooperation. The cognitive tests show some mild impairment, Dr. Adams said, his voice grave. His office felt more like a prison cell. Chloe sat in the corner, smiling faintly. A predator watching its prey, combined with the reports from your family. He continued, gesturing to Chloe. We have significant concerns. What kind of concerns? I asked, keeping my voice meek. Small. We believe you are in the early stages of dementia. Dementia. The word hung in the air. Heavy. Final. A death sentence. It is our professional opinion, Dr. Adams concluded, looking at me with cold pity, that you are no longer capable of managing your own affairs. I will be testifying to this effect at the hearing tomorrow. The setback was devastating, even though I knew he was paid off. A medical diagnosis. A powerful weapon in court. It was their word against mine. I felt the trap closing in. the walls suffocating me, the air leaving the room. That evening, the cruelty reached a new woo. I looked for Sarah's favorite necklace, a simple silver locket. I kept it in my jewelry box at home. I needed her strength before the hearing. The jewelry box was gone. I searched the bedroom, frantic, tearing the drawers apart. Nothing. I found Chloe in the living room, reading a magazine. Calm, collected, as if she hadn't just ripped my heart out. "Chloe, where is my jewelry box?" My voice trembled with rage. She didn't even look up. "Oh, that. You kept misplacing things, Michael. So I put it in a safety deposit box." Her voice was casual, dismissive. "We can't risk losing those precious memories," she added, turning the page. They were stealing from me openly now, justifying it with their lies. The cruelty of it took my breath away. They weren't just taking my business. They were taking my past. My memories of Sarah. The air in the courtroom was stale and heavy. It smelled of old wood and desperation. I sat at one table with David Green. I felt small, frail in my suit. The role I had played for weeks threatening to become reality, but I wasn't weak. I was ready. I clutched Sarah's locket. Maria had found it, hidden in Chloe's travel bag. She returned it to me that morning. It felt warm in my hand, a talisman, a promise. At the other table sat Ethan and Chloe, composed, somberly concerned. The picture of a loving family making a difficult decision. Their lawyer, Mr. Henderson, looked smug, arrogant. The judge, a stern-looking woman named Judge Riley, looked bored. These cases were usually routine. Sad but routine. She didn't know the storm that was about to break. Mr. Henderson started. He painted a masterful picture. A beloved father. A culinary legend. Sadly succumbing to the ravages of time. A man who needed protection from himself. He made me sound like a tragedy. Ethan took the stand. He was magnificent in his hypocrisy. "My father is a great man," he said, his voice choked with manufactured emotion. He wiped a tear that wasn't there. "He built an empire from nothing." He paused, letting the courtroom feel his pain. He looked at me, pity in his eyes. "But lately, he's not the man he used to be. The stress, the grief over my mother, it broke him. He listed my mistakes, the keys in the refrigerator, the forgotten recipe. He spoke with the earnestness of a concerned son, twisting the knife in my heart with every word. "We just want him to be safe," Ethan concluded, looking directly at the judge. "We love him, liar." The word burned in my throat. Then Dr. Adams took the stand. His testimony was clinical, devastating. He used complicated medical terms: cognitive decline, mild neurocognitive disorder, inability to execute complex tasks. He testified that I was incapable of running a business, of managing my finances. He confirmed the dementia diagnosis. When Dr. Adams finished, Chloe was beaming behind her mask of sadness. They thought they had won. They had left me in the forest, and the grizzly bear, the legal system, was closing in for the kill. Then David Green stood up. His demeanor was calm, almost dismissive. He approached the stand with the quiet confidence of a man who already knew the outcome. "Dr. Adams," he began. His voice was quiet, conversational. "How many times did you meet with Mr. Harper?" "Twice," Dr. Adams said, puffing slightly. "A total of perhaps 2 hours." "And during the first meeting," David continued, "who provided the background information?" "The anecdotal evidence of Mr. Harper's alleged confusion." Dr. Adams shifted in his seat. His daughter-in-law, Chloe Harper, was present. "So your diagnosis," David summarized, "is based on 2 hours of testing and the subjective reports of the very people seeking guardianship?" Dr. Adams stiffened. "My diagnosis is based on my professional evaluation." "Of course," David said smoothly. He then presented the results of my independent medical evaluation. Dr. Reed's report. 3 different doctors, testifying to my competence, my sharpness, my resilience. Mr. Henderson objected, but the seed of doubt was planted. Judge Riley was paying attention now. David wasn't finished with Dr. Adams. This was the moment we uncovered the bribery. "Dr. Adams, I noticed a significant deposit into your personal bank account 2 weeks ago, David said, his voice turning to steel. $50,000. From an offshore account. Can you explain that? Dr. Adams went pale. The color drained from his face. I don't know what you're talking about. We have the records, David said coldly. He held up a piece of paper. We know who paid you. We know the account traces back to Apex Hospitality Solutions. The courtroom murmured. A wave of shock. Dr. Adams was discredited, exposed. A fraud. David turned to Ethan, who had been recalled to the stand. Ethan, David said, his voice hardening. You testified that your father's decline was affecting the business, that his erratic behavior was jeopardizing the hearth. Yes, Ethan stammered, his confidence eroding. His eyes darting around the courtroom. The long-term stability was at risk. David placed a thick binder on the witness stand. These are the financial statements for the hearth for the past year, audited by an independent firm. Could you show the court where the business is suffering? Ethan fumbled with the pages, his hands shaking, his face turning red. Well, he stammered, it's more about the potential risk. The records show a 7% increase in profitability, David stated clearly, his voice ringing in the silent courtroom. It seems Mr. Harper is doing quite well for a man who can't think. David paused, letting the irony hang in the air. Now let's talk more about Apex Hospitality Solutions. Ethan went completely pale. He looked sick. Chloe's eyes widened in shock, her porcelain mask cracking. They knew they were caught. Are you familiar with that company, Ethan? It's a consultancy firm, Ethan whispered, his voice trembling. A consultancy firm that received over $350,000 from the hearth in the last 8 months? David pressed. That's very expensive advice. What exactly did they advise on? Ethan didn't answer. He looked desperately at his lawyer. Mr. Henderson was avoiding his gaze. The ship was sinking. Let me help you, David said, his voice rising in controlled fury. He pulled out the incorporation papers. The owners are listed as Ethan Harper and Chloe Harper. Judge Riley was leaning forward, her expression dark, her eyes fixed on Ethan. And this, David continued, his voice booming, is a signed lease agreement for a commercial space downtown, for a new restaurant named Catalyst. He held up the blueprints, the ones I saw in their office, all financed by the money embezzled from the hearth. He turned to the judge. Your Honor, this isn't a case about incompetency. This is a case about greed, betrayal, and systematic manipulation. They fabricated a crisis, gaslit their father, bribed a doctor, and manipulated the medical system to gain control of his assets, while simultaneously stealing from him. The courtroom erupted. Ethan was shouting denials. Chloe was sobbing hysterically, the sound harsh and grating. Fate, but David wasn't finished. The final piece of the puzzle. We have one final witness, Your Honor, Maria Sanchez. Maria walked to the stand, her back straight, her eyes clear and honest. She looked at me and nodded. Miss Sanchez, how long have you worked at the hearth? 25 years. I am the general manager. And in your daily interactions with Michael Harper, have you noticed any cognitive decline? No, she said firmly. He is as sharp as ever. He runs that restaurant flawlessly. He is the heart of the hearth. Then why did Ethan and Chloe claim the staff was worried? David asked. Because they created the worry, Maria said, her voice shaking with emotion. They manipulated situations. She looked directly at Chloe, disgust on her face. I saw Chloe coming out of the walk-in refrigerator the morning chef. Found his keys there. They were gaslighting him, and everyone else. David nodded. I have a surprise for you, Ethan. He produced a small digital recorder. I hadn't known about this. Maria had thought quickly. She had recorded them after I told her what I heard. She had protected me when I couldn't protect myself. This is a recording made by Miss Sanchez. He pressed play. Chloe's voice filled the courtroom, cold and clear, echoing the words that had haunted me. Just need to move faster. He won't fight it. He's too confused. Dr. Adams will back us up. We paid him enough. By the time Michael understands what's happening, it will be done. And then the chilling final words. He can spend his golden years playing checkers. The silence after the recording stopped was absolute, deafening. Judge Riley looked at Ethan and Chloe with utter contempt. The transformation from bored indifference to righteous anger was terrifying. In 20 years on the bench, the judge said, her voice shaking with anger, I have rarely seen such a blatant, cruel, and despicable attempt at manipulation, fraud, and elder abuse. She slammed her gavel down. The sound echoed like a gunshot. The petition for guardianship is dismissed. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office. Embezzlement, fraud, and bribery are serious crimes. I suggest you retain criminal counsel immediately. I looked at Ethan. The arrogance was gone, replaced by sheer terror. Chloe looked like a statue, her face frozen in disbelief and ruin. I had walked out of the wilderness, and I had brought the bear back home with me. The fallout was immediate and brutal. The news of the hearing and the criminal investigation spread through the city's culinary scene like wildfire. Ethan and Chloe's dreams of Catalyst evaporated. Their reputation was destroyed. I walked back into the hearth the next morning. The atmosphere was different. Later, the heavy weight was gone. The staff greeted me not with pity, but with relief and respect. The smell of garlic and thyme filled the air. I was home. I found Ethan and Chloe clearing out their glass office, supervised by a security guard David Green had hired. They stopped when they saw me, their faces pale, defeated. Dad, Ethan started, his voice broken. His arrogance shattered. We can explain. We were desperate. We were just trying to secure our future. Your future, not mine, I said, my voice steady. I felt no anger anymore, just a profound, aching sadness for the son I had lost. You were willing to erase me, Ethan, I said, to lock me away, to convince me I was insane. Just for money. You betrayed me. You betrayed your mother's memory. Michael, please, Chloe pleaded. The polish gone, her face ravaged by tears and fear. We'll pay the money back. Everything. Don't let them press charges. We'll be ruined. You are ruined, I said. You ruined yourselves. You chose greed over family, ambition over loyalty. Now you have to live with the consequences. I looked at them both, strangers in the house I built. You are both terminated, effective immediately. I watched as they were escorted out the front door, past the staff who watched them leave with cold silence, their heads bowed in shame. It was the last time I ever saw them. I called a staff meeting that afternoon. I stood before the people who had been my true family for decades. The cooks, the servers, the dishwashers, the people who had stayed loyal. The last few months have been the hardest of my life, I began, my voice thick with emotion. There have been betrayals that cut deeper than I thought possible. But there has also been loyalty. I looked at Maria, who was standing by my side, tears streaming down her face. I am 65 years old, I said. I am tired, and this ordeal has made me realize something. A legacy isn't about one man controlling everything. It's not about blood. I took a deep breath. It's about ensuring that the values we built this place on, integrity, passion, community, continue long after I'm gone. I paused. This was the real surprise, the one I had planned with David and Maria after the victory. I have decided to retire, and I am selling the hearth. A collective gasp went through the room. Fear flickered in their eyes. They thought they had survived the war only to lose their home. I am selling it to you, I continued, a smile spreading across my face. I have started the process of creating an employee stock ownership plan. Maria will be the new CEO. I looked at them, my family. This restaurant belongs to the people who pour their hearts and souls into it every day. The room erupted. Cheers, tears, disbelief, overwhelming joy. They rushed forward, hugging me, hugging each other. It was the sound of hope, of a future secured. Maria hugged me tightly, sobbing into my shoulder. Sarah would be so proud, Michael. So proud. I knew she was right. This was the legacy Sarah would have wanted. A few months later, the transition was complete. The hearth thrived under the new ownership. The food was still honest, the atmosphere still warm, but there was a new energy, a sense of shared purpose. I still came in a few days a week, but now I was just the chef emeritus. I enjoyed the cooking, the camaraderie, without the burden of the business. Ethan and Chloe were indicted for embezzlement, fraud, and bribery. They avoided jail time by agreeing to a plea deal. It involved full restitution. They lost everything: their condo, their cars, their reputation. They were financially and professionally disgraced. One cold evening, I was sitting in my quiet home, enjoying a simple meal. The local news was on in the background. A segment came on about the success of the Hearth's employee ownership model. I picked up the remote to turn it off. But then I saw them. The camera briefly panned across the street from the restaurant, and there they were, Ethan and Chloe, standing in the cold, staring at the warm light spilling out of the hearth. The place they tried to steal, the place that was now thriving without them. Ethan looked thin, defeated, a ghost of the arrogant man he used to be. Chloe was looking at the ground, her face hidden by the shadow. They had tried to take everything from me. In the end, they lost everything they valued. I turned off the television. I looked at the framed photo of Sarah on the mantel. The victory was bittersweet. I had saved our legacy, but I had lost my son. The wound would never fully heal. But as I thought of Maria and the staff, the true family of the Hearth, I realized that family wasn't just about blood. It was about loyalty, integrity, and the quiet dignity of a life lived honestly. "We did it, Sarah," I whispered. "I wasn't left in the wilderness. I found my way home. And that was a legacy no one could steal." Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot because your time matters.